Well, hello there, good morning, and welcome to my video on a Saturday morning. Uh, what you can see here is a piece of Canson Imagine mixed media paper that I've coloured with distress inks. I've used peeled paints, evergreen bough, or was it pine needles? One or the other, and chipped sapphire. So no, it's not peeled paint, it was bundled sage. So bundled sage is the one in the middle. The more greeny colour towards the outside is the pine needles. And the dark blue around the edge is the chipped sapphire. I like to colour paper. I like working on coloured paper. It's something I do when I'm adding colour digitally. And I just prefer it. I don't mind working on white paper, don't get me wrong. You've seen me do a lot of colouring, but drawing on white paper. But there's something so lovely about starting with a coloured background and working with that, especially when it comes to adding colour at a later date. So I'm using the Uniball Eye micro pen, and it reacts sort of with the distress ink, because the distress ink will stay a little bit damp on there. It takes a while for whatever allows it to stay wet and to be smoothed around the paper for a while. And so the line from this pen is a bit thicker than I'd usually have, but it's okay, I'll go with it. And you can see I'm just drawing lots of motifs. I've looked in my visual dictionary for inspiration for these, and I'm adding weight to lines, thickening some of the lines to give that illusion of dimension to them. Sort of, that's one of my favourite things to do when I draw, I think. It's a lot of fun. So I had planned to scan the piece of paper in, so I have this background for work in my digital work, but my scanner's playing up, it just would not connect again. So I'm not happy bunny about that. I don't know what the problem is, because it used to be just perfectly fine. So it seems to turn itself off from the Wi-Fi at home, disconnect itself for whatever reason, just random stuff. So here I am, just adding some more motifs. You can see there, I just go with the flow. I don't overly think things. I just sort of like flick through the book and something will catch my eye. I think, oh, that'll be nice to add. Let's go and add it over there, and just do it. Adding weight to lines again. And then I think here I'm adding some other patterns and shapes here, which take an interesting turn, if I remember rightly, as I make them sort of like swirl around and join in to various places. But I quite like that. Oh, and I decide then that I'd like to add some more definition there, and off we go again with these. It's very much an organic process for me, and the piece of paper towel is so that I don't get, sort of like damp fingerprints on the distress ink, and this ink is taking ages to dry, as it does when I've used distress ink on paper and not left it for many days to dry. So it means that hopefully I won't get too much smudging. I did get some, but it's all right. It's fine as it is, and say it is what it is. These were fun. It took me not a lot of time to work out what I was going to do, and it's that contrast that I like. Yeah. As I'm working on them, I get ideas what to do next, what I would like to do. It's very much black and white here. These shapes, these are familiar shapes and patterns that appear in a lot of my Entangled artwork. It's a never-ending source of fascination how just a simple range of shapes and patterns and so on can actually end up in such a diverse arrangement of motifs and textures and things of interest. Yeah. not quite sure how many of these I do. I actually think I do 7 in the end, because I do everything in odd numbers where I can, unless it's very small things that really don't matter. But then I tend to do them in clusters of odd numbers. So if I was going to put little circles or starbursts in the background, I would do them in groups of 3, but not worry how many groups of 3 I have, because they'd be scattered across. So there's something about your brain making more sense of odd numbers. It's not fighting hard to separate them into distinct groups as it does if you've got an even number of objects in a group, which is why gardeners often use odd numbers of plants in their garden. It just gives them a more pleasing appearance. And here's where I start adding some arches, because I love an arch. And I do. One of my big influences and inspirations is architecture, particularly Romanesque and Gothic architecture. Now here, I'm adding those little arches there and some weighted lines, because that side of the arch is a bit squashed, so I wanted to add something that looked heavy there, just to disguise the fact that I gone, oops, hand didn't go where I wanted it to go. That's fine. Just adding some shapes and patterns in that particular arch. Plan is I'll come back with colour or patterns in some way to actually add interest to those. These actually came out of an accident. My pen moved in towards the first of those arches, so I worked with it. No such thing as a mistake. Only happy accidents or creative opportunities. And that's very true, because I could have just gone, and started over, but I don't. I just keep going. And in the grand scheme of things, if I hadn't said that to you, you wouldn't have known that those patterns around the first set of arches, those little segmentations, weren't deliberate. You wouldn't have known that. Some more going on here. I do love Romanesque architecture in particular. Early English, early Gothic is also great, but Gothic, High Gothic is okay. Late Gothic, it's overly fancy and fussy. It's very pretty, very light and airy, and very ornate and detailed, but in some ways it overwhelms me. And that is a feature of me. I can be easily overwhelmed by information and so on. Romanesque doesn't quite overwhelm me as much, perhaps. But I don't know whether that's the case or not, but I really do find it fascinating. And a lot of patterns I've accumulated over the years have come from observation of patterns on arches and columns in Romanesque and other early churches and abbeys here in the UK. Absolutely love it. And I haven't visited one for a couple of years now, but they're not going anywhere. My favourite one is in Herefordshire. It's called Kilpeck, which is Kilpeck, if you want to look it up. It's a tiny little church and it's almost entirely Romanesque, and it survived the Reformation, it survived the Victorians mostly, and it's just absolutely beautiful. And I love going there, and different times of year, different seasons, different weathers, different times of day, and it's a different experience each and every time. Even though it's a familiar place, I notice different things on each visit. And if I have a sketchbook with me, then different things get sketched, or the same things, but they look different because of the light or the time of day or my mood. And that's something that I really do pay attention to now. I'll mention this very briefly, but it sort of like harkens back to an idea in archaeology about why people choose places to build things, particularly our ancestors back in the Neolithic Bronze Age, with their monuments, and about how that they may, the different times of day, the year, may be focal places for stories about ancestors, about their history, in the time when things weren't written down. It was all oral tradition. And I very much am aware of that, and how my experience of different places and thoughts and what I notice changes with the seasons and with the weather. I mean, here today it's really rainy, and then we get slightly sunny spells. And if I was out and about, which I'm not, because I'm sat here talking to you and being drowned out occasionally, no doubt, by somebody with a very noisy drill, which I'm leaving in, I'm not re-recording this, then I would be experiencing wherever I'm visiting in different ways, depending on whether it's raining, sunny, whether, my favourite cemetery, my local cemetery, the gravestones would be wet, and I would see them in a different way when it's grey and rainy compared to when it's grey with a bit of sunshine or bright sunshine, which would be different to a warm, dry, dusty day, which would be different to a wet day in the winter, and that clear winter light that you get. And the experience would be different, and perhaps the stories, the memories, the things that I glean from my visits would be very different, even if I just visited in the same way at a different year, a different day. It would always be a different experience. Different things would catch my attention and notice. And so part of me is beginning to understand that there's a rich source of inspiration and experience in places that are close to me, local to me. And as local travel has been the thing for such a long time, then it's something to start with, perhaps, and build up on. I don't know. I'm talking about this. This particular motif, oh my goodness, I overthought it hugely. And thinking is something I should not do when I'm doing art, because I really did think, what on earth I'm going to do? First, I started off with it all very bare looking. I thought, right, okay, let's go in and thicken some of these lines up and add some detail. And it was beginning to get messier and messier. And it's an example of Angela overthinking. I should just go with my instinct and my intuition, really. But, it took me ages to do, and it's going to stay like that because I can't do anything about it. And it may actually work out fine at the end. At the moment, it just looks like a load of scribbles there, doesn't it? But I can see what I've done to one side of me. And I'm thinking, yeah, it's okay. It's not the best I've ever done, but it'll be okay. It'll be fine. I can work with that. But yeah, the danger of smudging hugely was ever present here. I'm sorry about my hair in the bottom corner. Didn't realise I got my head so close and underneath the camera. I'm surprised I don't have my nose touching the paper while I'm drawing. I practically get that close sometimes. But yeah, loads of black ink used. And really, it took ages. So it's been a lovely time drawing. I will swear and curse at my printer scanner afterwards and get it working, maybe. But something I certainly want to do is to get backgrounds like this scanned in, so that I do have them available then for use in my digital artwork, and have my own bank of them, because I can't create backgrounds like that digitally. I could try, but I know that I would end up in a bit of a pickle with them. Whereas if I do it with traditional media and I get the finish I like, then scanning in is the perfect option. Look at all that black there. Has it made much of a difference? I don't actually know. Possibly there's distinct layers there, so perhaps it was worth all the time. But I know I'm coming up towards the end of this now. There's just a little bit left. So I'll just say thank you for joining me. I'll return to this in another episode, no doubt. And please look after yourselves and enjoy the weekend. Take care for now. Bye-bye.